Hey Guy, welcome back to Sleep Among Titans, where we drift through strange and quiet corners of the past, perfect for listening before you sleep. It's always amazing to see where you're all listening from. So as we settle in, drop a comment and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from tonight. It's nice to know we're all in this quiet corner of the internet together. Alright, today we're going to a place defined by cold. And I don't just mean the weather. Imagine the moment just before you wake up. Not in your own bed, but on a hard wooden plank. It's a special kind of cold. The type that doesn't just bite your skin, it sort of seeps into your soul. And your first conscious thought isn't some grand reflection on freedom or a longing for family. No, the human mind is far more practical than that. Your first thought is a much more pressing question: will today's breakfast be watery soup or very watery soup? That's the reality we're exploring tonight: daily life in the Soviet Gulag. We'll walk through an entire day from that first shiver of awareness to the final desperate search for rest. We'll explore how you could get in more trouble for having improperly polished boots you probably didn't even have, than for losing hope. And we'll listen for the quiet, bitter jokes that passed for laughter in the darkest of places. So get comfortable, the roll call is about to begin. But before the roll call comes the sound. It's not a bell. That would be almost musical. No, this is something far more industrial. It's the brutal metallic clang of a hammer hitting a suspended piece of railway track. It's a sound with no echo. It doesn't ring, it just stops. And it's the official start to the day. As thousands of bodies start to stir, the world outside the thin walls of the barrack takes shape in the grey pre-dawn light. You can make out the silhouettes of the watchtowers, the endless lines of barbed-wire fences disappearing into the woods. It's a vast, silent and deeply indifferent landscape, and somewhere near the mess hall there's a faded notice board. Pinned to it under a layer of ice are the camp regulations. Most are unreadable, but one rule is infamous. It's Rule 7. Boots must be polished at all times. Now this is darkly funny for a couple of reasons. First, you'd be lucky to have actual boots. Many are working with rags wrapped around their feet, something we'll get to later. Second, even if you did have boots, they'd be caked in an eternal layer of mud. Polishing them would be like trying to iron the ocean. But the rule exists. A perfect little piece of bureaucratic fantasy pinned to a wall in the middle of a frozen hell. It's a quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest cruelty isn't malice, it's absurdity. And with the ghosts of these pointless rules hanging in the air, everyone shuffles out for the day's first official ceremony. And trust me, it's not a tea ceremony. No, not a tea ceremony. The Russians have a word for it, Perklichka, the roll call, and it's a performance with its own unwritten rules, its own silent choreography. The first movement is the assembly. It's the sound of thousands of feet, some in boots, some in rags, shuffling across the frozen trampled earth of the main square. It's a river of grey and brown rags flowing from the barracks, converging in perfect practiced lines. There's no pushing, no shoving. There is an unspoken etiquette of shared misery. You find your brigade, you find your place in the row, and then you wait. This is the main act of the ceremony, the waiting, and it is an art form. The first rule of roll call is silence. Absolute silence. Any talking is a transgression that will be punished swiftly. But the silence isn't really about preventing escape plans. It's about control. It's a tool to force you out of the collective and deep inside your own head, alone with your thoughts and with the cold. And the cold, it's a physical presence here. It probes and prods, looking for any gap in your thin clothing. It steals the warmth from your armpits, from the backs of your knees. It snakes up your sleeves and down your collar. Your body learns its own desperate little tricks for survival. You curl your toes again and again just to feel them. You subtly rock back and forth, a motion the prisoners call the Siberian two-step, a tiny dance just to keep the blood moving. You learn to breathe through your scarf, if you have one, to warm the air just a little before it hits your lungs. To pass the time, to keep your mind from freezing along with your body, you play games. You recite things. Anything. Old poems you learned in school, mathematical formulas, the ingredients for your mother's borscht or a birthday cake. You rebuild your childhood home in your mind, brick by brick. It's amazing what the mind holds on to when it has nothing else. It's a little act of defiance, proving that this body may be standing in a frozen square in the middle of nowhere, but your mind is somewhere else, somewhere warm. You also learn to see. You notice the tiny, exquisite details of your prison. The way the frost creates feathery patterns on the barbed wire, turning it from something brutal into something momentarily beautiful. You watch the patterns of ice form on the collar of the guard's greatcoat. You become an expert in the subtle shifts of the pre-dawn sky, from inky black to a deep bruised purple, then to a washed-out hopeless grey. Because the purpose of the pereklichka isn't really just to count the prisoners. The count is part of it, of course, but the true purpose is a daily ritual of dehumanization. It is a quiet, systematic process to remind you that you are not a person with a name and a history. You are an entry on a list, a number, a body to be tallied, and by forcing you to stand there silent and freezing for an hour or more, the system reinforces its power. It proves it has complete ownership over your time, your body, your very existence. And then after an eternity that could be 30 minutes or 2 hours, it begins. The head of the camp guards, the naryadchik, steps forward with his clipboard. He's usually not a monster of hulking proportions. He's worse. He's a functionary, a man for whom this is all just paperwork with legs. He clears his throat and the reading starts. A name is called out a dry bark in the frozen air, and from somewhere in the ranks a single voice must reply, "Zdez." Here. Not too loud, not too quiet. And so it goes, a monotonous drone of names and replies, the only permitted sound in the entire camp. But sometimes the system shows its cracks. Sometimes there are moments of sublime accidental comedy. Imagine a new guard is given the list. A fresh-faced lieutenant from Minsk, eager to impress. He's rattling through the Russian names just fine, and then he hits a snag. A political prisoner from Georgia. The lieutenant squints at the paper. "Jam," he starts. He stops, clears his throat. Jumble. Shvili Georgi. The silence that follows is profound. The real Georgi Jamashvili stands perfectly still, his face a mask of stone. He will not help. No one will. To help would be to break the silent solidarity of the prisoners. The entire camp, thousands of men, are now locked in a quiet battle of wills with this one flustered lieutenant over the pronunciation of a single name. The lieutenant tries again, his face turning red. Jamashvili. It comes out as a question, a plea. Still only the wind replies. Defeated not by a rebellion, but by a few unfamiliar syllables, he furiously scribbles a checkmark next to the name and moves on, his authority just a little bit tarnished. No one laughs. No one even smiles. But a wave of something, a tiny invisible flicker of shared victory, passes through the ranks. It's not a triumph that will change their fate, but it's a crack in the monolith. A reminder that the system, for all its terrifying power, is still run by flawed, impatient, and sometimes slightly incompetent men. Finally, the last name is called. The numbers are tallied. The guards confer. A command is barked. The roll call is over. There is no cheer, just a collective silent exhale. The release of tension is a physical thing, like a rope that has been stretched taut and is suddenly cut. The ceremony is over. The gods of bureaucracy have been appeased. And now the entire camp, this city of ghosts, shuffles with a single unified purpose towards the mess hall. They move towards the day's first and arguably most important sacrament, the ration, the pica, the daily bread, and we're about to find out exactly what's on the menu. So what's on the menu in Hell's cafeteria? What is this sacrament that justifies the ordeal of the pereklichka? The destination is the mess hall, the stolovaya. It's usually a long, low building, often poorly built, but it's the only structure in the entire camp that always has a thin plume of steam rising from its chimney. That steam is a beacon. It promises, if not satisfaction, at least a momentary truce with the cold. The noise inside isn't the cheerful chatter of a normal dining hall. It's a low hum, the constant scraping clatter of 1,000 tin bowls and spoons, and the shuffling of 1,000 pairs of tired feet. There's a strange, exhausted patience to it all as you join the queue. You inch forward. At the head of the line, behind a crude wooden counter, are the cooks. They are prisoners themselves, usually the ones with a bit of clout or a useful skill, and they wield their ladles with the grim authority of kings. As you finally reach the front, the ritual is swift and silent. One ladle of soup is slopped into your bowl, a block of bread is slapped into your outstretched hand, and that's it. Your entire world for this one moment shrinks to the weight of that piece of bread in your palm and the meager warmth of the tin bowl. Let's start with the bread. The khleb, because in the Gulag the bread is everything. It's not bread as you and I know it. It's a dark, dense, damp block, almost like clay. It's heavy. The recipe is a state secret, but the prisoners have their theories. It's rye flour, of course, but bulked out with potato peelings, oat husks, and as the popular cynical joke goes, a healthy dose of sawdust for fibre. It has a sour, earthy taste that you eventually come to associate with life itself. This small block of bread is your primary fuel, your most valuable possession. It's currency. It can be traded for a pinch of tobacco for a needle and thread for a guard to look the other way. A man who has his full bread ration has a certain status. He has options. A man who has lost his or had it stolen is in mortal danger. And you never ever just eat it. The consumption of the bread is a sacred ritual. You find your spot at the long splintered wooden tables. You cradle the bread. You might lick the outside just to taste it. You nibble the corners first, making it last. You use a small piece to mop up every last drop of your soup, and when it's gone you lick the crumbs from your palm with the intense focus of a watchmaker. To waste a single crumb is not just a mistake. It is a profound sin against your own survival. And then there's the soup, the infamous balanda. This is where the camp's black humour really shines. The old-timers have a name for it, the hairdresser's special. Why? Because if you lean over the bowl, the watery, greasy reflection is usually clear enough to check your hair parting. The balanda is for the most part hot water that has been in the general vicinity of a few vegetables. Sometimes you'll find a few stray leaves of cabbage or a sliver of potato floating sadly at the bottom. To find an actual solid piece of potato, or on a truly miraculous day, a shriveled tiny fish head, that's like winning the lottery. You've hit the jackpot. You are the envy of your table. You eat it slowly, making sure everyone sees. Its main purpose isn't really nutrition, it's hydration, and most importantly, it's hot. It's a way to pour a little bit of warmth back into a body that has been systematically drained of it. It fills your stomach for a few minutes, creating a temporary comforting illusion of fullness before the gnawing emptiness returns. But here is the most sophisticated and cruel part of this whole system. It's the part that turns a simple meal into a weapon of control. Not everyone gets the same amount. The Gulag operated on what was called the kettle system. Your work performance yesterday determined your food today. There were officially 3 kettles of soup in the kitchen. If you were a super worker, a Stakhanovite who dramatically exceeded the work quota, you got your food from kettle 1. This was the best soup with more calories, and maybe even some discernible bits of meat or fish fat. If you just met the grueling daily quota, you got the standard issue from kettle 2. This was the watery balanda we've been talking about, and if you failed to meet your quota because you were sick or weak or just exhausted, you were given a punitive ration from kettle 3. This was little more than murky hot water with barely any caloric value at all. The difference between the kettles was slight, but it was the difference between life and death. It was a brilliant evil piece of psychological engineering. It atomized the prisoners. It broke their solidarity. It made survival an individual competitive sport. You weren't just working for the state. You were working against the man next to you for that extra spoonful of gruel. It turned prisoner against prisoner in a daily desperate struggle for a few more calories. The meal is over in minutes. You leave the mess hall not full, but with the gnawing beast of hunger temporarily sedated. The brief, precious warmth from the soup begins to fade almost immediately as you step back out into the cold. But the food has served its purpose. The fuel has been delivered, and now the engine must run. As the last bowl is scraped clean, another sound begins to ripple through the camp. The shouts of the guards, the harsh commands of the foreman forming the prisoners into their work brigades. The real work of the day is about to begin. It's time to go out there and earn tomorrow's bread. Earning tomorrow's bread. It sounds almost noble when you put it like that, doesn't it? A fair exchange of labour for sustenance. But there's nothing noble or fair about the morning's next phase. This is the transition from surviving to serving your sentence. The brigade's the brigadier already being formed by the time you step out of the mess hall. You find your group a family of about 20 to 30 men you work with every single day. And at the head of this family is the most complicated and conflicted figure in the entire camp hierarchy, the brigadier, the brigade leader. The brigadier is a prisoner just like you, but he's been given a sliver of authority. His job is to make sure you all work as hard as possible. If the brigade meets its target, he might get a slightly better ration. If you fail, he is punished more severely than anyone. He's your boss, your foreman, your Judas, and sometimes your savior all rolled into one. He's the man you have to trust and the man you can never fully trust. Once the brigades are assembled, the march begins. If the camp is a city of ghosts, the march to work is its daily silent exodus. It's a long column of grey figures 5 abreast shuffling through the snow. The only sound is the rhythmic shuffling crunch of thousands of feet and the occasional guttural command from a guard. And the guards, they don't march with you. They flank you moving along the edges of the column, their rifles held loosely. They're often accompanied by dogs, but these aren't the frenzied barking beasts you might imagine. They are as cold-bored and institutionalized as the men they are guarding. They trot along quietly, their breath pluming in the air, just another part of the system. The march can last for hours depending on where the day's worksite is. You trudge through the taiga, the immense primeval forest of Siberia. It's a beauty that is terrifying. Towering pines and larches heavy with snow, a silence so profound it seems to swallow sound. The sky is a vast empty canvas. It's a powerful constant reminder of your own insignificance. You're a tiny fleeting speck in a world that was ancient before you were born and will be unchanged long after you're gone. Eventually the column halts. You've arrived at the office. There's no building, of course. Just a designated patch of forest to be cleared, or a frozen canal to be dug, or the dark maw of a mine entrance. The first order of business is distributing the tools, and this is often the first joke of the workday. The tools are a sad collection of rusty, worn-out relics. 2-man saws with missing teeth and handles wrapped in rags, shovels with cracked shafts, pickaxes with chipped points. On the rusted blade of a particularly pathetic-looking saw, you can just make out a crudely stenciled propaganda slogan, "Za rodinu za Stalina," for the motherland for Stalin. The saw, however, seems to have other ideas. It looks like it would rather be anywhere else. A grizzled old prisoner next to you might catch your eye, nod at the tool and whisper without a trace of a smile, "Don't worry about that saw, it's more tired than I am." And then the work begins. It falls into one of a few categories of misery. There is logging. You and another man are partner. You're bound to work the 2-man saw. It's a grueling rhythmic dance of pull and release. Shh, sunk. Shh, sunk. You pull, he relaxes. He pulls, you relax. All day. The air fills with the sharp, clean scent of pine resin. The only break in the rhythm is the terrifying crack and groan of a falling giant, followed by a shouted warning. Workplace accidents are common and officially classified as industrial wastage. There is digging. Attacking the frozen earth, the permafrost, with a pickaxe and shovel. It's not digging, it's chipping. You are a human woodpecker trying to peck a hole in a mountain of iron. Each swing sends a jarring shock up your arms. You work for an hour and seem to have produced little more than a pile of icy rock-hard gravel. And there is mining. You descend into the darkness, leaving the sky behind. The air is thick with dust, the only light from a few weak flickering lamps. The only sound is the echoing clink, clink, clink of pickaxes against the rock face. It's claustrophobic, disorienting work. You don't see the sun for the entire day. You sweat in the deep cold. You forget what the outside world looks like. But how do you endure this for 10, sometimes 12 hours a day? You disconnect. After the first hour or two of shivering and misery, something strange happens. Your body goes on autopilot. Your mind, your consciousness detaches and floats somewhere else. You enter a trance. The rhythmic work becomes a form of meditation. Your thoughts dissolve. There is only the pull of the saw, the swing of the axe, the weight of the shovel. It's a strange state of grace born from utter exhaustion. A mental numbness that is the body's last line of defense against a reality that is simply too much to bear. You are no longer a man. You are a machine made of flesh and bone. But this machine is driven by a hidden relentless pressure. This isn't just about moving earth or cutting down trees. This isn't just about looking busy to avoid the guard's attention. Behind every swing of the axe, behind every shovelful of dirt, there is a number, a target, a figure that hangs over your head like a judge's gavel. It has a simple, terrifying name, the norma, the quota, and meeting that number is the only thing that truly matters. Norma, the quota. It's a word that sounds simple, almost clinical, a target, a goal. But in the Gulag, this one word is the engine of everything. It's the invisible guard that stands behind you all day whispering in your ear. It's the ghost that haunts every worksite, more feared than any living man with a rifle. It dictates the pace of your work, the quality of your food, and ultimately your chances of survival. So who decides what the norma is? Who comes up with these magic numbers? It's a question that reveals the sublime, terrifying absurdity of the whole system. Picture a man, let's call him Comrade Ivanov in a warm, well-lit office in Moscow or Novosibirsk. He's a mid-level bureaucrat in the Gulag administration. He has probably never seen the Siberian tiger in winter. He's never felt permafrost shatter a shovel handle in his hands. But he has a chart. On his chart it says that a brigade of healthy, well-fed workers in the summer forest near Ukraine can fell 30 trees a day. So he makes a small scientific adjustment for the harsh conditions of the Kolyma region. Perhaps he generously knocks it down to 20 trees. He doesn't factor in the 50 below zero temperatures, the knee-deep snow, the pathetic quality of the tools, or the fact that his workers are starving. The number he writes down is not based on lived reality. It is based on a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet devised by a man you will never see is now your god. So as you work, your mind is never truly numb. That trance-like state is always accompanied by a frantic internal abacus. A part of your brain is always counting, calculating, worrying. Okay, that's 1 tree down. How long did that take? 30 minutes. The norma is 20 trees today, at 10 hours. That's 30 minutes per tree. No breaks, no slowing down. I'm already behind schedule. I have to work faster. Or if you're digging, my pile of rocks. Is it as big as Dimitri's pile? His looks bigger. Why does his always look bigger? Is he working faster, or is his spot on the ground softer? Maybe I should have stood where he is. I need to catch up. It's a constant gnawing anxiety, a race against an invisible clock. Your own body becomes a machine you have to analyze for efficiency. Are you swinging the axe correctly? Are you wasting energy with that movement? The norma turns your own mind against you, making you your own harshest foreman. It's the kind of impossible situation that gives rise to a particular type of camp humor, the grim, knowing joke known as the anecdote. A new prisoner, shivering and desperate, asks his brigadier, "Comrade leader, what's the good news today?" The brigadier, without looking up from his work, says, "The good news is the norma is only to dig a 10-meter trench." The new prisoner is immensely relieved. "That's not so bad. What's the bad news?" The brigadier sighs, lets his pickaxe fall. "The bad news is they've only given us spoons." It's not a joke you laugh at. It's a joke you nod at with a deep internal sigh of recognition. It's a perfect bitter summary of the entire system, a demand for the impossible, equipped with the inadequate. And the consequences for failing to perform this impossible task are very real. Because failing to meet the norma isn't just a demerit on a clipboard, it has immediate tangible consequences that begin that very evening. Remember the kettle system? Fail the norma, and you are sentenced to eat from kettle 3. You get the watery broth, the ghost of a soup. You get a smaller bread ration. And so the downward spiral begins. With fewer calories, you have less energy for the next day's work. With less energy, you are even more likely to fail the norma again. Another day, another punitive ration. Your body starts to consume itself. You get weaker, slower. This is how a man becomes a dokodyaga, a goner. You see them around the camp. They are the shuffling, hollow-eyed figures who seem to look right through you. They are men who have fallen off the cruel treadmill of the norma and can no longer get back on. They're already ghosts, just waiting for their bodies to acknowledge the fact. This pressure infects the whole brigade. The norma is often for the group, not just the individual. The total output is what matters. This means the stronger workers, the ones who are still healthy, have to overproduce to cover for the weaker ones. Sometimes this creates a powerful sense of solidarity, a silent agreement to pull a sick comrade through. But just as often it creates resentment. It creates tension. The brigadier has to play a desperate balancing act, screaming at the weak to work harder, pleading with the strong to do a little more, all to save his own skin and the collective stomach of the brigade. So you fight all day against this official bureaucratic pressure. You struggle to meet the number set by a man in a warm Moscow office. But as the day wears on, you learn a vital lesson of survival. You learn that the guards, the brigadier, and the all-powerful norma are not the only powers in this place. There is another hierarchy, another set of unwritten rules that operates in the shadows back in the barracks. It's a world with its own kings and untouchables, its own laws of tribute and respect. And these laws you come to find are often far more immediate and far more dangerous than any official quota. These unofficial laws belong to a shadow society that exists within the camp's wire fences, and this society has 2 distinct warring castes. Understanding them is the key to understanding life and death in the barracks. On one side you have the politicals. This is the group you as a teacher, a poet, an engineer, or a farmer who told the wrong joke would belong to. The official term for you is a kontrrevolutionär, a counter-revolutionary, but the camp slang for you is a kontrick, or more mockingly, a 58er, named after Article 58 of the Soviet Penal Code, the infamous catch-all law that could land anyone in the Gulag for anything from actual treason to anti-Soviet agitation, a crime that could mean owning the wrong book. Most 58ers are ordinary people completely unequipped for the brutal realities of this new world. They are in the eyes of the system the true enemies. On the other side, you have the professional criminals, the murderers, the armed robbers, the lifelong thieves. They are called the blatny. And here is one of the most twisted pieces of Soviet logic. In the eyes of the state, these criminals were considered socially close elements. They were seen as misguided proletarians, wayward class brothers, who could theoretically be re-educated and reformed. They weren't ideological enemies like the politicals. This official distinction meant the blatny were often given positions of trust within the camp, as cooks, orderlies, even as brigadiers. They were a privileged class, and at the very top of this criminal aristocracy, like gods on a squalid Olympus, were the Vori Zakon, the thieves-in-law. These are not just criminals. They are a brotherhood with a strict code of conduct, a long history, and an absolute unquestioned authority in the criminal underworld. You can spot them from a distance. They carry themselves with a kind of arrogant stillness. They often have intricate tattoos, epaulets on their shoulders, stars on their knees, signifying they will kneel for no one, churches with a number of cupolas to represent their number of convictions. Their word is law. A dispute settled by a vor is final. To defy him is to sign your own death warrant. So as a kontrick of 58er, how do you navigate a world where these men hold the real power? You learn a new set of rules, and you learn them fast. Rule 1. You become invisible. You learn to walk with your eyes down. You learn to take up as little physical and psychological space as possible. You make yourself smaller, greyer, less noticeable. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down, and here the hammer is often a sharpened spoon handle in the dark. Rule 2. Your property is not your own. That extra piece of bread you saved. The new pair of gloves your family sent you, if a vor wants it, it's his. You don't protest, you don't argue, you hand it over without a word. It's not a transaction, it's tribute. It's the tax you pay for the privilege of being left alone. To resist is to show a disrespect that will be answered with extreme violence. This is where the camp's dark humour gets particularly cruel. The blatny have a profound theatrical contempt for the intellectuals. They see your education not as an asset, but as a hilarious weakness. A powerful vor lounging on his bunk while you struggle to mend your torn jacket might call out for all to hear, "Hey professor, can your philosophy chop this log for me? Can you write a poem that will keep us warm tonight?" His cronies will chuckle. It's not just bullying. It's a brutal expression of the Gulag's core truth in this world. Abstract thought is worthless. Physical strength, cunning, and a capacity for ruthless violence are the only virtues that matter. Your knowledge of Shakespeare or quantum physics is a useless currency here. They are demonstrating in the most humiliating way possible that their world has replaced yours. The relationship isn't always purely predatory. Sometimes a powerful vor might take a political under his protection. Not out of kindness, but for practical reasons. He might need the professor to read his letters from home or write a petition for him in fancy official language. In this exchange, you become a sort of court scribe, a pet intellectual trading your useless skill for a shield against the casual violence of the barracks. It's a precarious, dangerous alliance, but it can be the difference between surviving the winter and not. So you spend your day crushed between two massive grinding millstones. On one side there is the official tyranny of the state, the guards, the dogs, the impossible Norma. On the other there is the unofficial tyranny of the barracks, the social terror of the Vori, the constant threat of theft and violence. You are navigating two separate overlapping systems of oppression at every waking moment. By the end of the workday you're hollowed out, exhausted, not just by the physical labour, but by the intense, unceasing mental strain of it all. But then as you stand at the worksite leaning on your shovel, feeling the last of your energy drain away, something shifts. It's not a sound, it's not an order, it's a change in the light. The sun, that distant, indifferent observer that has crossed the sky all day, is beginning its slow descent towards the horizon. The harsh grey light begins to soften, to turn gold and pink at the edges. The workday is almost over, and with the sunset comes a brief, fragile moment of transition, A pause in the relentless grinding of the machine, and then the signal comes. It's not a shouted command, it's a distant whistle, thin and sharp in the vast cold air. And all across the worksite the machines of flesh and bone shudder to a halt. The two-man saws fall silent in the middle of a cut. The pickaxes are lowered and leaned against the frozen earth. For the first time in 10 or 12 hours there is a sudden shocking quiet broken only by the sigh of the wind through the pines. And in that quiet you look up. The sky, which has been a monotonous grey canvas all day, is on fire. Streaks of violent orange, deep purple and a soft delicate pink paint the horizon. Down here on the ground the world is a brutal mess of churned up mud, snow and human misery. But up there is a masterpiece. An indifferent masterpiece painted for no one. The low sun casts impossibly long shadows, making the trees look like giants striding across the landscape. It turns the surface of the snow from grey to a pale glowing blue. It's a moment of dangerous beauty. Dangerous because it could almost make you feel something. It could almost trick you into feeling hope, and hope is a heavy thing to carry in a place like this. So you don't let yourself feel hope. Instead, you just exist within the moment. It's a neutral gear of the soul. You're too tired to despair, too numb to dream. You just are. A man standing in a vast frozen wilderness, watching the sun go down your breath, turning to ice in the air. This moment belongs to no one. Not to the guards, not to the Vori, not to the state. It's a brief silent truce in the war against your spirit. The guards bark the order to reform the brigades. The journey back to the camp begins. This march is different from the morning one. The dread and anxiety of the morning are gone, replaced by a deep animalistic exhaustion. It's a slow, shuffling pilgrimage. There is no energy for conversation, no strength for thought. There is only a single overriding instinct pulling you forward, the magnetic pull of the camp. The pull of Domoy homeward, even if home is just a crowded, stinking barrack. Finally, after what feels like another lifetime, you see them through the trees. The familiar, hateful silhouettes, the watchtowers, the wire fences, the camp gates swinging open to swallow you once more. You are returning home. Sex. But home is not a place of rest. It is simply the next stage. It is another world with its own rituals, its own sounds, and its own small, desperate struggles for a little piece of space, a little bit of warmth. The workday is over. The struggle for the night is about to begin inside the walls of the barrack. The struggle for the night begins, and its main battlefield is the barrack. The barrack. You push through the heavy wooden door and step across the threshold, and the first thing that hits you is the air. You've spent the last 12 hours in the clean, sterile cold of the Arctic, and your lungs are not prepared for this. It's a wave of thick, humid human warmth. But it's not a comforting warmth. It's a physical presence, an atmosphere you could almost chew. It is, to put it mildly, an orchestra of odours. The first note is the sour, damp wool smell of 100 wet coats and foot rags steaming in the heat of the central stove. Underneath that is the sharp animal smell of unwashed bodies, of sweat and exhaustion. Then there's the acrid, smoky scent of the low-grade coal burning in the stove, and mingling with everything the faint but persistent smell of the latrine bucket from the corner. You hated this smell on your first day. Now you barely notice it. It is simply the smell of home. Then there are the sounds. It's not a loud place. There are no shouts, no laughter. Instead, there is a constant low human hum. It's a symphony of coughing, a deep rattling cough that seems to be the official anthem of the camp. It's the low groans of men sitting down on their bunks, their joints and muscles screaming in protest. It's the constant quiet rustle of clothing being removed or adjusted. The slurp of a man drinking water from a tin cup. It is the sound of 100 men existing in a state of managed misery. The light is dim, coming from a couple of naked low-wattage bulbs that dangle from the rafters, casting long dancing shadows. The room is dominated by the bunks, the neri. They are simple wooden platforms, usually stacked 2 or 3 high, stretching from one end of the long building to the other, disappearing into the darkness. You navigate the narrow aisle and find your spot. This is your kingdom. A space 2 feet wide and 6 feet long. It is your dining room, your bedroom, your closet, and your chapel. You sit down on the rough wood, the feeling of not being on your feet so blissful it's almost painful. And now the first and most important ritual of the evening begins. It's not about food or rest, it's about your feet. You carefully unwrap the portianki, the long strips of cloth that serve as socks. Your feet are your tools, your means of production. and the portianchi are what keep those tools from breaking. You unroll them slowly. The smell is eye-watering, but you ignore it. You're a doctor examining a patient. You check your feet for new blisters, for raw spots, for the dreaded signs of frostbite. This is a map of your own pain, and you must study it carefully. Once the inspection is done, the second part of the ritual begins the great game of drying the portianchi. In the centre of the barrack is the stove, the pechka. It is the barrack's sun, its social centre. It is perpetually surrounded by a forest of damp rags hanging from makeshift lines or simply laid out on the floor nearby. Getting a prime spot close enough to dry, but not so close as to scorch your only pair of foot rags, is a nightly strategic challenge. You find a space, arrange them carefully, and hope they will be dry by morning. And you hope no one in their own desperation decides your rags look better than theirs. And once you've dealt with your foot rags, you have to deal with the landlords, the true owners of these bunks, the khlopi, the bedbugs. There is a long-running, undeclared war fought every single night in every barrack. The prisoners have their tactics. If you are lucky enough to have access to a little boiling water, you can pour it into the cracks of the wooden bunks. Some men try to use splinters of wood as tiny torches, scorching the insects in their nests. But these are temporary measures, a futile gesture of defiance. The khlopi, of course, consider this a minor inconvenience. They are the true old-timers. They have been here longer than you, and they will be here long after you are gone. They are the masters of this domain. You don't defeat them, you just learn to share. Or rather, you learn to be shared, so you sit on your bunk. The initial flurry of activity, the foot rags, the battle plans against the bedbugs begins to die down. A quiet descends deeper than the earlier hum. It is the quiet of profound, soul-deep exhaustion. Men just sit staring into space. Their bodies are here in the barrack, but their minds are far, far away. The barrack is designed to be a machine for atomization, for breaking human connection. It's 100 men each locked in his own private struggle, his own private memories, his own private pain. The system is built to make you believe you are utterly alone. In this world where survival is a zero-sum game, where every man is an island of misery, is there any room for anything else? Is there any space for kindness, for generosity, for a connection that isn't based on threat or exchange? You would think the answer is no. But sometimes in the quiet corners of the barrack, in the flickering uncertain light, you witness something that defies all the logic of this place. A small, almost imperceptible gesture that doesn't belong here. An act of humanity. Now let's be clear. We are not talking about grand, heroic gestures of rebellion. We are not talking about dramatic speeches or organized resistance. In the Gulag, that kind of heroism has a lifespan measured in minutes. The humanity that survives here is a quieter, more secretive creature. It's a tiny, stubborn weed growing in the cracks of a concrete monolith. It's found in moments so small and fleeting you would miss them if you weren't looking closely. Let's watch for one. Look over there at the man sitting on the edge of his bunk. He's a dokhodiaga, a goner. You can see it in his hollow eyes and the way his hands tremble slightly. His meager bread ration was stolen earlier, or perhaps he was punished with the third kettle. He's staring at his empty palms. Another man stronger and healthier is sitting nearby, methodically chewing his own ration. He seems to be ignoring the goner completely. But then, with a quick, furtive movement when he thinks no one is looking, he breaks off a corner of his own precious bread. Without making eye contact, he leans over as if to adjust his foot rags and presses the small piece of bread into the other man's hand. There is no thank you. There is no acknowledgement. The goner closes his fist around the bread, brings it to his mouth and eats it. The exchange is silent, invisible. It has to be. To openly give charity is to advertise that you have a surplus. To receive it is to advertise your weakness. But in that silent, secret transaction, a life may have just been extended by another day. It was a declaration as quiet as a heartbeat. Today we will not let you starve. Or consider the needle. In a world where everything is rotting and falling apart, a simple sewing needle is a tool of immense power. It is a tiny silver sword against the entropy of the camp. There might be one man in the whole barrack who owns one passed down or acquired through some miracle. He is a king in his own right. He doesn't have the brute power of a Vor, but he has a different kind of magic. And after the evening meal, a small quiet line might form near his bunk. A man with a ripped sleeve, another with a hole in his only blanket. One by one they are allowed to use the needle for a few precious minutes. To stitch your coat together is to stitch your dignity back together. It's a small battle won against the relentless decay. And then there is the sharing that costs nothing but risk. In a far corner, an old man, a former schoolteacher from Kiev, has a small audience. A few younger prisoners, barely out of their teens, are huddled close. The old man isn't talking about politics or revolution. He is whispering a story, a fairy tale, about a brave prince, a talking wolf, and a hut that stands on chicken legs. His voice is a low, raspy murmur, but his audience is captivated. For 10 minutes, the barrack, the hunger, the cold, it all disappears. There is only the story. The old man is giving them the most valuable gift he has left, a memory of a world where magic was possible. He's reminding them that a universe exists beyond the barbed wire. Of course, even these acts of grace are often coated in the thick shell of Gulag cynicism. Imagine a prisoner who has managed to get a few flakes of makorka, the rough, cheap tobacco that is more valuable than gold here. He sees a friend who is desperate for a smoke. He carefully pinches a tiny amount from his stash and passes it over. The friend whispers his profound thanks. The giver just shrugs, and with a deadpan expression says, "Don't mention it. Just doing my part to overfulfill the 5-year plan for generosity." It's a perfect Gulag gesture. The kindness is real, utterly real, but it's wrapped in a thick blanket of irony. To show raw, naked sentimentality would be a weakness, a vulnerability that this place preys upon. The joke is a shield that allows the act of kindness to happen, without making either man feel exposed. So why take these risks? Why share your bread when it might mean you go hungrier tomorrow? Why tell a story when silence is safe? Because every one of these acts, no matter how small, is a rebellion. It is a declaration that you're still a man, not just a number on a list. It's a way to look the dehumanizing system in the eye and say, "You have not won." To share your bread is to say, "You cannot turn me into an animal." To mend a coat is to say, "You cannot make me fall apart." To tell a story is to say, "You cannot erase my world." But these moments are fleeting. They are sparks in the darkness, not a steady flame. They have to be squeezed into the tiny slivers of time that exist between the evening meal and the final dreaded lights-out command. This brief, precious, and ironically named period is known as free time. And what one does in this freedom tells you everything you need to know about the priorities of a soul living on the very edge. Free time. Svobodnoye vremya. It's perhaps the most bitterly ironic phrase in the entire Gulag lexicon. The words conjure images of leisure, of relaxation, of a moment to yourself. The reality, of course, is the complete opposite. This is the hour, sometimes two, that exists between swallowing the last of your evening ration and the final absolute command for lights out. And it is not free. It is in fact some of the most crucial and demanding work of the day. It is a second unpaid personal work shift performed not for the state, but for the stark purpose of surviving until morning. So what does one do with this freedom? What are the hobbies of a man in hell? You don't see anyone reading a novel or playing a game of chess. The activities of this hour are a catalogue of desperate maintenance. Take a look around the barrack. Over there, a man is carefully sharpening the blade of his axe on a whetstone he has guarded for years. His movements are slow and deliberate. He is not doing this for the state. He is doing this for himself. A sharp axe bites deeper. It works faster. A sharp axe helps him meet the norma. A sharp axe helps him earn his bread. He is lovingly tending to the very tool of his own enslavement. A little further down, another group is engaged in laundry day. This consists of a single bucket of murky freezing water that has likely been used by 10 other men before them. They are scrubbing their precious portianki or their only spare shirt. They use a sliver of the state-issued soap, a grey, sad-looking bar that smells vaguely of fish oil and despair. They are not washing their clothes. They are merely negotiating with the dirt, trying to reach a temporary truce. The goal is not to be clean. Cleanliness is a forgotten luxury, but to be slightly less filthy to ward off the lice and the skin sores for one more day. In another corner, a man performs his evening grooming. His mirror is a triangular shard of a broken bottle he keeps wrapped in a rag. His razor is another piece of sharpened metal. He carefully, painstakingly scrapes the stubble from his face, his eyes narrowed in intense concentration. It's a dangerous act. One slip could mean a nasty cut and a risk of infection, but the act itself is a rebellion. In a place designed to strip you of your identity, to look at your own reflection, to see that you still have a face, is a radical act of self-respect. This is also the time for the camp's engineers and artists to get to work. Necessity is the mother of invention, and the Gulag is a vast, desperate mother. You see men weaving sandals out of birch bark. You see them carving a new spoon out of a piece of firewood, the slow patient whittling a form of meditation. You might even see the camp's Edison, a man who has figured out how to create a makeshift lighter, a cricalo from a piece of flint, some scavenged cotton and a metal button. The man who can create fire is a man of immense stature. There's a grim humour to it all, of course. A guard walking through the barrack might see a prisoner meticulously wrapping a fraying shovel handle with scavenged wire. The guard, feeling bored, might sneer, "What's that you're doing, 58er, picking up a new hobby to pass the time?" The prisoner, without looking up from his intricate work, might reply in a deadpan voice, "Just a bit of macrame. It helps me unwind after a long day." The guard walks away shaking his head at the prisoner's strange, insolent joke. But it's not a joke, it's a shield. It's using the language of a world of comfort and crafts that doesn't exist here to describe the desperate reality of a world that does. It's a way of saying, you cannot even understand the nature of my work. And the sound of this free time is unique. It's not the enforced silence of the roll call or the rhythmic clang of labour. It's a low, industrious murmur, the scrape of metal on stone, the whisper of a knife whittling wood, the quiet sloshing sound of water in a bucket, the rustle of men patching their clothes. It is the sound of 100 tiny individual struggles against entropy. It is the sound of humanity refusing to completely fall apart. Every single one of these tasks is a race against the clock, a race against the fading light and your own drooping eyelids. You are fighting your own exhaustion to complete these chores because you know that a minute spent mending your boot tonight might save you an hour of agony tomorrow. It is an investment in your own future, even if that future is only the next sunrise. But this strange industrious hum of free time doesn't last long. It's just a brief interlude in the vast emptiness of the evening. A final, frantic scramble to prepare for tomorrow before the day's last non-negotiable command is given. The light from the naked bulbs, as meager as it is a resource, and it's about to be cut off. Another whistle is about to blow, one that signals not the end of work, but the end of the day itself. It signals the coming of the true deep night. It signals the coming of the true deep night. And it begins as the workday did, with a sound. A whistle blows again. Not the one that releases you from labour, but one that calls you to the final duty of the day surrender. It's sharp, impatient, and absolute. The low, industrious hum of free time ceases instantly. A frenzied but quiet ballet of desperation ensues as men rush to finish their tasks. A last stitch is pulled, a last tool is hidden away, a last mouthful of water is drunk. You scramble to your assigned bunk. You must be in your place. The barrack door creaks open one last time, and a pair of guards enter for the povaker, the evening verification. This isn't like the formal, brutal ceremony of the morning. This is a quick, perfunctory head count. They walk down the narrow aisle, flashlights sweeping across the tiered bunks, counting the bodies. They aren't interested in names, only numbers. They are no longer commanders of a labour force. They are zookeepers, making sure all the animals are in their cages for the night. They reach the end, the numbers match, and without another word they leave the heavy wooden bar thudding into place on the outside of the door. You are sealed in. A moment of tense silence hangs in the air. Everyone is waiting, and then a voice from the doorway bellows the day's final command. "Ot boy!" It means roughly, lights out. But it feels like something more. It feels like, stand down, surrender, cease to be. And with that one word, the naked bulbs in the rafters are extinguished. The plunge into darkness is instantaneous and total. It's not a dimming, it's an amputation of sight. For a few seconds, your brain struggles to comprehend the sudden lack of information. The world is gone. You're floating in a black, featureless void. And then your other senses, now hyper-aware, rush in to fill the emptiness. Your ears especially begin to pick up the secret symphony of the barrack at night. This is the orchestra of exhaustion. The percussion section is, as always, the coughing, the constant rattling wet cough that is the Gulag's true soundtrack. It's a chorus that rises and falls throughout the night, a testament to the collective illness of the camp. Then you have the ghostly soloists, the sleep talkers, men trapped in dreams of another life. One might murmur a woman's name over and over like a prayer. Another might issue a quiet, nonsensical command to a long-dead horse on a farm he'll never see again. Another might just repeat a single word, domoi, home. Then come the quietest and most heartbreaking sounds, the weepers. In the anonymity of the total darkness, the iron control that holds these men together all day finally cracks. You will hear a man trying to stifle a sob, the sound of a soul breaking quietly in the dark. No one says anything. No one offers comfort. To acknowledge the sound would be to violate the sacred privacy of another man's grief. You simply listen, and you understand. And beneath it all are the bass notes, the animal drone of 100 bodies shutting down. The wheezing snores, the grinding of teeth, the soft rustles of men trying and failing to find a comfortable position on the hard, unforgiving wood. Before sleep takes you, there might be one last brief exchange with the man on the bunk next to you. But you don't say good night. That would be a ridiculous sentiment from another world. Instead, the exchange is a perfect piece of Gulag realism. You might whisper, "Do zavtra," until tomorrow. And your neighbour, his voice a disembodied murmur in the dark, will reply, "Na preklichke uvidimsia." See you at roll call. See you at roll call. It's the most honest and deeply cynical good night imaginable. It's a statement of a shared grim fate. The only thing we can be certain of about tomorrow is that it will begin with another ordeal. There is no sweet dreams, only the acknowledgement of the next day's first trial. And yet, as you lie there in the dark, a strange and paradoxical feeling begins to settle over you. The night is a prison within a prison. You are locked in a sardine in a can of human misery. The cold deepens, seeping up from the floor. But the night is also a liberation. It is a liberation from the guard's watchful eyes. A liberation from the relentless soul-crushing pressure of the Norma. A liberation from the complex social dance with the Vori. In the darkness, you are no longer a worker, a number, or a target. Your body at last is your own. For these few hours, your only job is to breathe. Your only task is to try and find a little warmth, a little rest. The world outside your own skull has ceased to matter. The physical journey of the day is over, the barrack is asleep. The body, for what it's worth, is at rest. But the mind does not stop. Now in the total privacy of the dark, the final escape begins. This is the journey inward into the only place the guards and the wire fences can never truly reach. This is the journey into the inner world. This is the journey into the inner world. The first step is to let the physical body disappear. You've acknowledged its pain, its hunger, its crushing fatigue all day. Now you give yourself permission to let it go. You mentally untie the knots of pain in your back. You imagine the gnawing in your stomach as a distant, fading echo. You let the cold become an abstract fact, something happening in another room to another person. The hard bunk beneath you dissolves. The sounds of the barrack fade into a low, meaningless hum. Your awareness withdraws from the world of the senses and retreats inward. And here in the boundless sovereign territory of your own mind, you are finally free to go wherever you please. For many, the first destination is the museum of memory. The mind becomes a gallery, and you are its sole visitor, walking its silent, familiar halls. Each memory is a carefully preserved exhibit. You can stop at any one you choose. Here is a room that is your childhood kitchen. You can smell the yeast of your mother's baking bread. You can feel the warmth from the big stove. The memory is so powerful, so perfectly reconstructed, that for a moment you are truly there. You turn a corner, and here is another exhibit, your wedding day. You can see the exact shade of your wife's dress, feel the nervous energy in the room, hear the specific melody the musicians were playing. You can walk right up to a memory of holding your child for the first time and feel the impossible feather-light weight of them in your arms. These are the crown jewels. You take them out each night, polish them, admire them, and put them carefully away again. They are a reminder that the barack is a temporary condition, but that love and warmth were once real, and therefore could be real again. For others, the inner world is not a museum, but a workshop. The engineer, lying in the dark, retreats to the clean, logical world of blueprints and stress points. He mentally redesigns a bridge. He solves a complex equation. He isn't doing it for the state, he's doing it for himself. It is a way to remember that his mind is still a sharp, capable tool, that he was once a creator, not just a digger of ditches. The carpenter mentally builds a perfect cabinet, his mind's eye seeing the grain of the wood, the precision of the joints. It is a quiet act of remembering a time when his skills were a source of pride, not a means of meeting a quota. For the religious, this inner world becomes a chapel. There are no icons, no incense, no priest. But here in the silent dark, a man can have a conversation with God, or with his ancestors, or simply with the deepest part of himself. He can pray the prayers his grandmother taught him, his lips not moving. It is a search for a different kind of strength, an appeal to a higher authority than the camp commandant. It is a way to find a sliver of meaning in the meaningless, a flicker of divine order in the chaos. And then if you are lucky or perhaps unlucky, your mind slips further past conscious control into the unpredictable theatre of dreams. Gulag dreams are a strange and often cruel landscape. Sometimes they are simply anxiety dreams, reruns of the day's torments, but with a surreal nightmarish twist. You dream you're at a magnificent feast, a table, groaning with food. But just as you reach for a piece of roasted chicken, you realize you have no fork. To get one, you must go to a small office in the corner where Stalin himself is sitting behind a desk. He pushes a form towards you. "Fill out Form 27B in triplicate," he says, his voice flat and bored. "Then you can have your fork." The bureaucratic hell has followed you even into your subconscious. But the worst dreams, the most painful ones, are the good dreams. You dream you are home. It's not a memory, it feels real. You're sitting in your own chair. Your family is there, laughing. The dream is filled with sunlight and warmth, and the easy comfort of love. And then you are wrenched from it by the distant metallic clang of the wake-up call, and for a few brutal seconds upon waking, you forget where you are. The crushing weight of remembering the bunk, the cold, the barrack is the cruelest moment of the entire 24-hour cycle. This is why the true masters of survival in this inner world, the old-timers who have endured for years, often practice the final most difficult form of mental escape. They have learned to go to a place of pure, white, silent nothing. They have trained their minds to stop, to not remember, to not plan, to not dream. It is a form of self-induced hibernation, a conscious choice to shut down all non-essential mental functions to conserve every last calorie of spiritual and psychological energy. It is the mind's final fortress, a blank, empty room where the miseries of the world cannot find purchase. It is the quietest place on earth. And so the night passes, in these hidden worlds of memory work, prayer and dreams. The body lies in the frozen dark of Siberia, but the soul travels. And this cycle, the wake-up call, the preklichka, the piker, the labour, the norma, the return to the barack, the otboy, and the final retreat inward. This cycle repeats itself, day after day, week after week, year after year. A lifetime measured in the grinding of a terrible monotonous machine. But even the most relentless machine eventually runs down, and for every man, one way or another, a final day in the camp arrives. And for every man, one way or another, a final day in the camp arrives. For the lucky ones, it comes not with a bang, but with a quiet, bureaucratic whisper. A name is read from a list. A set of flimsy release papers is pressed into a hand. A guard unlocks a gate and motions them out, and the man steps through. He walks away from the watchtowers and the barbed wire back into the world. The feeling is not the explosive joy he might have once dreamed of. It is a profound, hollow strangeness. The colours of the world seem too bright. The sounds are too loud. The simple sight of a child laughing or a woman walking freely down a street is so overwhelming it's almost painful. He carries the camp with him, of course. He will carry it forever. But he also carries a new and secret knowledge, a deep and unshakable understanding of the sacred, unbelievable luxury of the ordinary, the luxury of a full meal, the luxury of a door that closes from the inside, the luxury of being able to speak your thoughts aloud, or to choose to be silent without fear. And that knowledge, that deep and hard-won appreciation for the simple peace of a quiet room is the final gift of this story for you tonight. As you lie here now in your own space, feel the reality of your own world. The story of that prisoner's day is over. Yours is here. His bed was hard splintered wood, yours is soft. Feel the mattress supporting you. His blanket was a thin, damp rag that offered no real defense against the cold. Yours is warm and heavy. Feel its gentle weight a shield against the night. His night was filled with the sounds of coughing and quiet grief from 100 other suffering men. Your night is filled with a gentle, peaceful silence. Listen to it. It is a treasure. He was surrounded by bodies yet utterly alone. You're in the comfortable solitude of your own safe room. He dreamed of a single piece of bread. You can sleep without the dull, constant ache of hunger. His waking was a metallic clang of dread, the start of another cycle of misery. Your waking many hours from now will be to the soft light of a new day, a day that is entirely and completely your own. We listen to these stories from the strange and quiet corners of the past, not to dwell on suffering, but to understand the incredible resilience of the human spirit. We listen to understand that even in the deepest darkness, small acts of humanity can flicker like candles, and we listen finally to feel in our own bones a profound gratitude for the peace that we so often take for granted. So now it is time to let the story fade. Let the images of the snow and the wire and the barracks dissolve like smoke. They are in the past. You are here. Let the weight of your own body sink deeper into your bed. Let your breathing slow down. There are no roll calls here. There is no quota to meet tomorrow. Your only task now is to rest. Let the darkness of your room be a comfort. Let the silence be a blanket. And let yourself drift. Sleep now. Sleep among the titans.